Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of For Those About to Pod, We Salute You. This episode, Matt and I will be having a review of 2020. We'll look back at our favourite songs, our favourite albums, reissues, live gigs that we attended, and some of the key events of 2020. We'll also in this show look forward to 2021 and see what's ahead of us in all things rock. If you like the show, please subscribe to our podcast via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your usual services. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter. But as always, we'll kick the show off with my partner in podcasting, Mr. Matt Rogers. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Hello, Brian. Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Getting ready for Christmas.
Well, me too. So we're looking back at the past 12 months.
We are indeed.
Still an interesting year from a music perspective, even though we haven't had too many opportunities to go and see live music, not in person, obviously. I suppose lockdown has given us the opportunity to, maybe experience things more and listen to more albums and, absorb more material that's out there.
I think so.
I certainly have. I found myself listening to albums in their entirety, which is something I haven't done for a while because I've had the time to do so, which has been good. So there have been some positive things coming out of it. So I think we're going to look at a variety of things, aren't we, with songs and albums and so on. But I'll kick off with some of my favourite songs of the year. As is always the case, there are always new performers, new acts, new bands that come along with a song that hooks you in, inspires you to, explore a little bit more of what they've got to offer. And this year has been no exception. So there's been a few things that have really kind of pricked my interest this year from, I would say, not so established performers, let's say. And I'm going to go through a few that might be of interest to people. Firstly, a great song by a reasonably established band called Robert John and the Wreck, a song that I couldn't get out of my head during the summer, I think it was, called Oh Miss Carolina, which is a great song from a band called, as I say, Robert John and the Wreck. I've been around a few years. You're smiling, Brian.
Oh, sorry. When you said Carolina, I just think of Shaggy. Oh, Carolina. But it's probably not that song that they're playing.
No, funnily enough, it's not. No.
Sorry.
No, they're one of these kind of rock / country bands, which is not always my cup of tea, but certainly Robert John and the Wreck with Oh Miss Carolina, again, inspired me to check them out a little bit more, and quite an interesting outfit.
Did you not go and see them at Ramblin' Man when they played?
No, I've never seen them.
There was a poll in the Friends of Rambling Man. People are asking about who's your favourite headliner and who's your favourite band that you've seen at Ramblin' Man that you didn't know before. And I actually voted for Robert John and the Wreck as my number, as the band that I most enjoyed, who I'd never heard of before. I remember going to see them early in the afternoon and at Ramblin' Man, and their set was rocking. It's a really good album.
Exactly.
Good show.
Well, thank you. And you've just touched on something which is obviously the beauty of festivals, and something we probably missed out this year is, as you say, exploring the bands lower on the bill. I think most people that have been to festivals have seen someone who you will end up seeing again, buying albums and everything, which is the beauty of it and ultimately what it's all about. Yeah. But sadly, not many festivals this year.
No.
But some next year, hopefully. So that was Robert John and the Wreck, Oh Miss Carolina. Go and find it. Great song. Listen to a bit more of them as well. In the same vein, a band that is, again, quite new, only had one album out last year, is a band called Joyous Wolf. And a song called Odyssey. Now, I'm not too sure about the name. Mm-hmm. It's quite an interesting name, of course. But the song Odyssey is from their debut album, which is called Place in Time, which was released last year. And again, same sort of thing. I heard it, I thought, wow, this is interesting. Good song, good musicianship, good vocals, well worth checking out. American band, quite young, again, 4-piece. I don't really know much about them. But again, someone to look out for. But check out a song called Odyssey, one of my songs of the year. Moving forward, again, another new act, a lady called Katie Pruitt, a young singer-songwriter based in Nashville. Aren't they all these days, though, Brian?
It's most big albums, that's where Mr. Bonamassa has now moved to. Yeah, Joe's there. Nerdville East, as he calls it.
And didn't Deep Purple do Whoosh there?
They did
last year. Whenever it was.
Yeah.
So Katie Pruitt, a song called Expectations, which is off her debut album, called Expectations as well. Just beautiful voice, good musicianship, well worth checking out, and a really fun video as well. A sort of a video of kind of school days. They got a gig in the back of a lorry in the school grounds and so on in the video, but a good song all the same. And again, one of my songs of the year, Katie Pruitt. Look out for that.
Will do. And
then finally, a band called Massive Wagons, who I've become a fan of this year. They've been going for about 10 years. They're one of those kind of, overnight successes that have taken 10 years in this case. And a song which kind of struck me as being almost a soundtrack of the last year, a song called In This Together. And again, check them out. Good band. They're an interesting sort of mix of, heavy metal and sort of tongue-in-cheek lyrics. Massive Wagons, who I saw on one of those kind of stream gigs earlier this year. First time I've seen them live. Good band, I would say on the rise. But yeah, the song In This Together, check it out. It is, I'm sure it wasn't necessarily written in 2020, but certainly it's got, a resonance and a relevance this year for sure. So those are my songs of the year, Brian. An eclectic mix, but why not?
Well, exactly. And I think, as you say, it's given us an opportunity to listen to lots and lots of different music. If we're not out gigging, I was talking about this to someone earlier on today about it's nice to be able. We like to gig and we like to support artists and we like to pay our money and keep them going. And I think actually in 2020, I've probably bought more music, both digitally. I've bought lots of stuff on Bandcamp, to support artists.
Right.
And I think a lot of bands have been trying to put product out. And what I like as well is with lockdown and technology, you're finding lots of little project-y bands. We may have talked about it before, where you've got Mike Portnoy and Joel Hoekstra. Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater and Sons of Apollo, and Winery Dogs. Joel Hoekstra from Whitesnake and Night Ranger, and then they had Dino, the young Croatian singer, and they did the cover version of Jefferson Airplanes or Starships, Jane. And people are able to just record that, stick it on Facebook, and then it's just ping out there. It won't get released, but it's something which is nice. So artists who never get a chance to play with each other, together now are doing things through technology, which is great. I'm going to steal the old marriage analogy for my songs of the year, where you do something borrowed, something blue, something old, something new, whichever way to. So in terms of the four songs of 2020 that I would probably call out would be, so if we go with something old, AC/DC Shot in the Dark was a shot in the arm at a good time in the year when there's been some good music, but the anticipation of the new AC/DC album, and Shot in the Dark was just, it's 3 minutes of just AC/DC, and the way in which it was nicely packaged up, promoted very well by, Planet Rock, and you got some access. There's been some access to the band, so Brian Johnson and Angus have been available to the media, which has been nice, because AC/DC, a bit like Van Halen, are one of those bands who don't really say anything on social media. So
no,
Shot in the Dark was my old. In terms of new,
good choice.
There's a great band called Larkin Poe. I've been listening. And they covered Kiss from a Rose by Seal recently. Again, stuck it on Facebook, and the two girls are singing it, and it's quite rootsy, bluesy. And there's a young British husband and wife duo called When Rivers Meet, and they've got their latest album out. So they have a single which came out fairly recently called Battleground, and they're in that same vein of rootsy resonator blues. Nice contrast between the female vocals and the male vocals. And Battlegrounds is the single which is out at the moment. In terms of something borrowed, Chris Cornell. I thought that Chris Cornell borrowing Guns N' Roses classic Patience, I thought that was a nice cover version, and it's just lovely to hear Chris singing his interpretation of some classic songs, and I thought he did a really nice version. And my final song of the year, which has just been just released, is Adrian Smith, and you mentioned Mike Portnoy from the Winery Dogs, but his partner in crime on the guitar, Richie Kotzen. The pair of them, now this has been muted for a couple of months now because I think Adrian and Richie live quite near each other in Los Angeles, but they've just released their debut single together called Taking My Chances. I listened to it on Spotify last week, and I love it. It's just Adrian Smith to me is the secret weapon of Iron Maiden. I loved, I love the more melodic side of Maiden. I like the B side. I can't remember. I think, is it the B side of Can I Play With Madness? This is where the Iron Maiden aficionados will crucify me. Okay. Well, that's just you. There was a B side called Reach Out.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, it might be Can I Play? It's in that era, in the mid 80s. And Adrian sings vocals on it. And obviously,
I remember it.
Yeah, you know the single. So Adrian Smith, with Wasted Years, and he sings the vocals along with Bruce. It's just a really nice. That single's really good. It's quite grungy in ways. It sounds like Richie Kotzen's doing all of the singing, but that'll be nice to see if that's a teaser single for maybe an album. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Those are my four.
Great choices, Brian.
Thank you.
Great choices. Chris Cornell, obviously a very sad loss a few years ago to us all. But as you say, a huge legacy, and, interesting that this covers material has come out now. And as you say, a beautiful version that he did. But I'm with you. I mean, this Adrian Smith, Richie Kotzen collaboration is very interesting. Because they're both in their rights, very good guitarists, good singers, as you said. So who knows where that will lead? And I totally agree with you about Adrian Smith. He is, he's kind of the quiet, talented one. I would almost equate him to, dare I say, Vivian Campbell in Def Leppard. He just kind of gets, Sir Vivian, of course, he gets the job done. Good guitarist, great songwriter, written some good songs in the Iron Maiden sort of canon of work. So really interesting to see how that goes, like you. So great choices, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
good start. Yeah, I think I'm going to check a few of those out as well. Larkin Post certainly, who have kind of caught my eye once or twice. They've had an album out recently which is called Self-Made Man. Interestingly enough, so that's one of the albums that was released last year. Not on my list of favourite albums, I might add.
Okay,
but no, good choices, Brian.
Thank you.
Choice.
Thank you.
So. What are you very welcome, my friend? What did you make it to any gigs this year?
Oh,
is it gigs next?
it is gigs. This what I can assure you there wasn't 4 gigs in 2020. I can only remember, and you know what? What have we done in 2020? We've probably contributed to saving the planet a little bit more because we haven't been printing out our gig tickets, which, as you well know, I have plastered all over my walls in the house, all my gig tickets, and I do religiously update my setlist.fm with all of the gigs that I go to. And when I've looked at 2020, I have St. Luke's, which is an old church in Glasgow, Francis Dunnery's It Bites is my gig of 2020, which was brilliant. I'm a big It Bites fan. They've got a new album coming out.
Okay.
It's all hush hush. We don't know who's in the band, but I got to see Francis Dunnery play in St. Luke's in Glasgow, and he did a full It Bites set, which was really nice. And it's a shame actually, because it was going to set the year up well for lots of other gigs, and then everything, obviously, with the COVID situation, everything either got cancelled thereafter or has been. We're basically gig central in 2021, Matt. We'll never get time to do a podcast. We'll be at gigs all the time.
That's right. Might as well tell everyone now. It's going to be far fewer podcasts next year because we'll be out at gigs. Yes. Actually, funny you should mention the whole kind of sustainability piece, because your personal carbon footprint must have been reduced quite dramatically, because I know you do travel a long way to festivals. I do. And also when you're there, you do get through a lot of plastic beer glasses due to the amount of beer you drink at festivals. So I think we can all, I can all kind of give ourselves a pat on the back.
Well, let's,
albeit in a strange way.
Exactly. At least this year, I didn't lose my car keys at Rambling Man this year for the third year in a row.
Yeah, that would have been
because we weren't there.
Interesting, wouldn't it? No, that's true. Sadly, my gig of the year was the only one I went to. Actually, I did check on the old calendar, and the only one I went to was a Planet Rock event called Winter's End, which is on a holiday camp in Dorset, and that was at the end of February. And I saw an array of bands there. Actually, some good ones, I might add, from Cormac Neeson.
Oh, from The Answer.
Yeah. I mean, again, someone to check out. His solo material is great. I mean, he's a great singer, great performer, and check out his solo material. But he was there. The Sweet were there, who from not obviously, only one remaining member from the 70s lineup, the classic lineup, as it were. They were quite good. And Those Damn Crows, who we'll talk about later a little bit, maybe. Yeah. And closing the event, funny enough, the last band that I saw in person this year, strangely enough, happened to be my favourite band, Diamond Head, who closed the festival with their magnificent set of classics and new material. So, that was my only / best gig of the year. Yeah. But good one all the same. However, there have been some online things, which I've watched a couple. I think you have too.
I have indeed, yeah. I've done
It's been good, isn't it? And I know, you know what? I'm good with, pay-per-view. We talked last time about Fish and Dream Theater doing kind of, let's say, fundraising things, for want of a better expression. But, in the context of online gigs, streaming gigs, or whatever you want to call it, I'm fine with the sort of pay-per-view concept, because how else are these bands going to make money in the current climate? I mean, gone are the days where you can sell 40 million albums and, the money comes kind of streaming in, sort of thing. These days, bands, they need to tour to promote an album, and subsequently they make more money from the tour than they do potentially with the album. So, I'm good with the pay-per-view thing. I watched a few, Wayward Sons, Those Damn Crows, Mason Hill, to name but a few. Stone Broken were there. Those young kind of aspiring bands that really should have been on a continuing upward trajectory this year, but sadly were curtailed. So, did you watch any of those online streamed gigs, Bri?
I did. And just thinking about what you said, when I look at the last one that I watched, which was Toto a couple of weeks ago, I really felt I was at the gig, and I didn't feel that they were playing to an empty audience. And there was a few people in the room, obviously social distancing, but there was a little bit of an audience there. If I go back to the very first one, so I'll go through the main ones that I watched. My very first one was Richard Marx. I like Richard. Oh, yeah. I like Richard Marx. I'm a big fan of Richard Marx. And he does a solo show, and I actually had tickets to go and see Richard, which was going to be March this year. Then it got pushed to October, and then it's into 2021. And a great songwriter, and he was really good. When I look back at his first show, and he was probably one of the first pay-per-view, he kept mentioning after he'd sang a song and he got no reaction from the crowd, he kept saying, "This feels all a little bit weird." And you don't want that, because that creates you sort of feel sorry for him, going, "Oh, poor Richard Marx. He's in a wee room all on his own." And I think as artists have gotten used to playing in empty spaces to TV cameras, when I look at so Richard Marx was the first one, and I enjoyed it. I sat and watched it on a Sunday evening live. I watched it live with the rest of the world, and you could go on Facebook and you could be commenting. It was quite interactive. And then I watched Damon Johnson, who is part of the Thin Lizzy band that gets back together now and again, and he with his band plus Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest did an hour and 10 minutes of Thin Lizzy. And it was that was just classic. But it's maybe 4 or 5 months since the Richard Marx gig, and Damon was into it, and they were rocking on stage, and him and Richie Faulkner doing all the Lizzy stuff, and you got a little bit of a sense of there's no crowd. And Toto, which was the last one I watched, they made no mention at all or little reference to no audience, and I sat there and went, excellent. Toto sounding really good. For all of the challenges that Toto have had this year with lawsuits, etc., Steve Lukather and Joseph Williams and the band that they've created around them, and you're kind of going, Toto will tour in Europe next year. Oh, that will be superb. So it's a nice way to see some of your favorite artists. So that's just a little run through some of the artists. But I agree with you, watching Toby Jepson Facebook Live when he does an evening of Little Angels tunes or Ricky Warwick. And it's nice to see some of our favorite acts who are like Black Star Riders, and at a lower level. Even let's give a shout out to Biff Bifford, and his son did some stuff just in a wee room like you and I sitting, and Biff's on his bass guitar playing Wheels of Steel. It's great. It's great.
I know. Yeah, no, you got to admire people's creativity, haven't you, really? And as you say, Toby Jepson did, loads of gigs from his kitchen, and God bless him. It kept people entertained. Yeah. And when times are bad, you want a bit of kind of light in the darkness. And people like Toby and Toto, and as you say, Biff Byford and his son, and whoever have provided that. And that's it's a beautiful thing. It has to be kind of recognized and commended. And it's hopefully, with things moving as they are, this next year will be a good year. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get out there and really fill their boots at gigs with music. I know you and me are, you and I are. Anyway,
we are.
I know we are, because we've had a year off. Okay, so that was gigs.
Yep.
Some good was there, despite the environment we're in. So let's move on to albums of the year. So again, a great year for albums. Lots of diverse stuff. 1 or 2 albums we've talked about. And there's always plenty of albums in any year, which is great if you're a music fan, of course. So anything catch your eye, Brian? Strike you as interesting?
Yeah. It seemed to be 2020 was a resurgence in a number of bands. And going back to what you said earlier, because of the music industry and the way in which acts make money, it seems to be people will record an album to do new material, and they tour it now to promote. So the tour promotes the album, and you make your money from the album rather than you make your money from the record sales and you lose money on the tour. It seems to have swapped round. and it's really interesting. And with some of the albums that we'll maybe talk about for 2021, where albums haven't been released this year because the band want to tour. But I thought was interesting. I've got 3 albums that I'll call out as, and I'll talk about my favorite album of the year. But 2 notables I'll call out, which is really old bands who I don't know much about, apart from the big singles. So my 2 notable albums of 2020 are one's from Kansas. They're not from Kansas. They are Kansas. And middle of the year, Kansas delivered an album which is The Absence of Presence, which is a great album. I know I took a chance on Kansas. A good friend of mine put me onto it and said, Brian, you got to listen to the new Kansas album. It's really, really good. And I went, well, I know Carry On Wayward Son, and that's about it. And Yngwie Malmsteen covered it many, many years ago. And I actually gave it a good listen. And very well produced. Songwriting is excellent. The musicianship is superb. I like my progressive rock, and I like my transatlantics and my dream theaters. And it's quite a commercial, melodic, transatlantic feel to the album. So the first notable album for me in 2020, which I was, again, a surprise, was Absence of Presence by 2020. And a band who...
Kansas.
Yeah, I'd like to see. The second one is the band where can we have more cowbell? Hey,
Blue Oyster Cult.
Blue Oyster Cult. So
yeah,
and there was a really good interview in Classic Rock magazine about the making of their new album, which is called The Symbol Remains, and it was released quite late this year in October. What a fantastic album that is. Some of the tracks on the album, that was me. You've got Eric Bloom, you've got Buck Dharma, you've got the mainstay guitarist and vocalist, but the touring band that they've got around them, the musicians are just fantastic, and this is the first album that the touring band has done. I was really, really surprised with it. So Blue Oyster Cult, I know Blue Oyster Cult because of, the old Reaper song.
Don't Fear the Reaper.
Don't Fear the Reaper.
Yep.
And I know very little. I watched them at Rambling Man a few years ago, and they put on a really good set. But I was pleasantly surprised with that album. So a notable. But my album of the year from an artist who is in a band that I wouldn't say know much about is Mr. Corey Taylor from Slipknot and his album CMFT, which was released this year, and it is a fantastically, it's nothing like. So if anybody's out there thinking that Corey's solo material is like Slipknot's, it's not at all. It's it's in parts quite Americana, if you like your Tom Petty, John Mellencamp, and it just showcases what a great singer he is. He can do the screaming and screeching that he does in Slipknot, but he also sings in Slipknot as well too. And this album, there's a track on it which is called Black Eyes Blue, which is one of the singles. As an album, it's just a nice piece of work, and I hope that he gets a chance to tour it, etc. I surprisingly for me, I would put Corey's album as my album of the year in 2020. How about you?
Very good. Well, yeah, I wouldn't have chose any of those, to be honest, or chosen any of those, but I will certainly check them out. Thank you, Brian. Well, I've got 3 that I'm going to talk about real quickly. So a band called Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown had an album out early in the year called Pressure. Now, Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown are one of those bands that have they've kind of, you know, they're a fairly meteoric rise. They found themselves supporting some big acts, particularly Guns N' Roses. I think they've been on with, and possibly AC/DC as well. But certainly they've had some, you know, high profile kind of opening slots. But and I've seen them a couple of times, and they are great live. I mean, so much energy. If you want to kind of kick up the backside, you know, go and watch a band, they are your band, I tell you. And they had an album out early in the year called Pressure, which again is well worth a listen. It's out there. It's kind of, you know, it's very accessible rock. There are another one of these kind of Nashville-based bands, but check it out. A band called Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown, and an album called Pressure. In a similar vein, an album that I've grown to love over the last couple of years, basically from seeing, as I was talking about earlier, seeing them at a festival and thinking, wow, these guys are good. It's a band called Those Damn Crows, who I've ended up seeing in their own right, supporting, Download, Rambling Man, you know, Planet Rock events, you name it. And they are absolutely first class live. I mean, they are one of those bands that is really on an upward trajectory. And they had their second album out this year, and it was called Point of No Return, which is, again, you know, really a solid classic rock album. Some great songs, great musicianship, short and sharp songs, no, you know, 20-minute spectaculars, but, you know, again, quality stuff, well produced, brilliantly played, great singer in Shane Greenall, and just a great band, you know, and one of those bands that has captured their vibe, their live vibe, I would say, in an album. And that's quite difficult to do. There's plenty of bands that we've maybe talked about that possibly struggle to do that. And so I would certainly recommend Point of No Return by Those Damn Crows. Now, I'm surprised you didn't mention this album, Brian, because it was a lot of people's album of the year, and obviously much anticipated. We did touch upon it earlier, but certainly Power Up by AC/DC. Again, we talked about it, I think, on our first podcast, possibly, how we were so excited about it. And, you know, it did deliver. And there were some little sort of kind of almost non-AC/DC moments on that album, if you listen closely. Obviously, I think I said when we spoke about it before, they haven't turned into Yes or Jethro Tull, or, you know, there's no acoustic ballads on there, guys, you know, but it's a good, solid AC/DC album. And I remember you and I thinking or hoping that it'll be more Black Ice than Rock or Bust. And I think it kind of is between the two, if I'm honest, but it's still a good, solid rock album. And, you know, I'd put that in my top 3 albums of the year from the point of view that it's AC/DC. Everyone loves them. They're one of these bands that kind of transcends age groups, tastes in music. You know, you go to a festival and there's people that don't really like rock, but they like AC/DC, a bit like the Foo Fighters, a bit like Guns N' Roses. Yeah. And, certainly Power Up by AC/DC is up there. And, I mean, I like it. I think it's great. And, you know, let's have a few more albums from AC/DC. And certainly let's have a tour with, you know, dates all over the country, including Edinburgh, Glasgow, Belfast, you name it. So everyone gets a chance to see them before they hang up their boots, as it were, or school uniform or whatever.
It is interesting, the love for AC/DC, the outpouring of love with them back, and obviously with no Mal, and it's lovely that, you know, Stevie Young plays Mal's guitars on the album, and Malcolm's credited as the, you know, the soul, you know, it's cool songwriting with Angus. But I've certainly in the last couple of weeks, as they've been doing the press junkets and going round, you know, Angus has said they've got more material, and you know, we haven't, and I think this is going to be interesting for bands who during lockdown are recording and have lots of material kicking around. you're going to find that we may get back to bands being able to tour. You'd like to think next year at some point, but you could find people could quite easily record an album this year, but like the old days, record an album this year and then go out on a tour and then record an album the next year. And I think there's a lot of people that are using the time to just pull material together so they can do exactly as you say, get out and play live. Because that's the one thing that artists that you and I like, and I love it because we love live music. It's people like Dave Grohl, everybody, Sammy Hagar, everybody's saying, I'm missing live. I'm missing the audience. And I think it would be nice. It would be nice in some ways that we as the fans were treated a little bit better, maybe with ticket pricing, with all of the Live Nations and the Ticket Masters of this world. Maybe there can be a little bit of evening things up. I have to say, I have my doubts. I'm seeing the prices. I haven't seen the prices for Aerosmith next year, whenever they're touring. But it's nice that bands feel hungry, that they want to go out. And I agree with you. AC/DC, you've got to go and see them. You've got to go and see them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Everyone should see AC/DC once in their lives.
Absolutely.
Well, so those were, good choices. And I will check yours out, as it were. And I'm sure you may have already checked one or two of mine out. But, some good choices there, Brian.
Yeah, yeah.
So shall we move on, my friend?
We will indeed.
So we're going to talk about the rock event of the year now. Mm-hmm. So I'll go first, if you like.
You can.
For a change. So, no, I think the thing that I remember 2020 from a rock event perspective is the sad passing of Neil Peart from Rush back in January. He'd been suffering from brain cancer for a few years, and sadly we lost him in early January. And I've been a Rush fan for 40 years or so. And it's one of these people, one of these bands that you kind of grow up with, really. And he was such a fantastic drummer, wrote the lyrics and was just an all-round nice guy. Not very, not forthcoming in terms of being in the spotlight, but, just someone that I think was looked up to not only by the fans, but obviously by musicians as well. So, the sad passing of Neil Peart, I mean, Rush had finished 5 years ago, but the passing of Neil Peart was, very sad. And, a lot of people have still not got over it. I mean, I think, again, with the passing of some rock stars, which is, sadly more and more the case, we've seen the passing of quite a few this year. It becomes when they're of a certain age, it becomes almost a regular thing. And we lost Pete Way and Paul Chapman and Ken Hensley this year. And I think you're going to talk about another one in a minute. But the passing of Neil Peart, very sad. At least we got a huge canon of work that that Rush put out there. But again, that was probably the thing that one of those things that, oh wow, at least Neil Peart's died. Maybe 2020 can't get much worse, but sadly it did. But so that was the kind of landmark event for me this year, Brian.
And I think I'm like you. I came to Rush through friends. I came to Rush through university, where I shared a flat with a couple of guys. One of them was a guitar player, and one of my friends had good vinyl collection. And I can remember Distant Early Warning and tracks like that. So I can remember Mike got tickets to go and see Rush in 1992 down at Wembley Arena, and it's the only time that I've ever been to Wembley Arena. It's always nice when you can go. Where have you been to venues, and what's the first gig that you see? So Wembley Arena for me, 1992, and the Roll the Bones tour, probably the most eclectic support band, I'm going to say weird support band that I've ever seen, which would have been Primus.
Oh, right.
Primus were the support band, obviously fellow Canadians. And I just thought Primus were weird. It was like Frank Zappa meets Rush, etc. So I got to see, before I really got into Rush's material, I got to see Rush live first. And that, to see the three of them together, and as you say, Neil Peart, Geddy, and Alex, master musicians, and the fact they brought it together. And my love affair with Rush started in '92. And one of the things that I love about DVD, and over the years with a band like Rush, who have been very private, as you well know, wouldn't have been media darlings in any way at all, and had, their fans got them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've loved over the years, and I would say, just to back up what you've said about Neil's passing, I'd recommend to everybody, if you're not even a fan, but you want to go and appreciate how pivotal Rush were as a band, the outsiders who made it big, I'd recommend to everybody to go and watch the movie Beyond the Lighted Stage, which is done, which is a great documentary about the band. Goes through the whole history and always has, it's a nice biopic, and it doesn't miss out the bits of the band which were difficult when Neil's wife and his daughter passed away in close succession. Very private man, and it just shows you how the three of them, the two of them supported Neil, gave Neil the time that he needed. But every single DVD that's come out, Time Stood Still. Again, that was the documentary of the final tour. And they give so much access, and they're such a funny band. And you'll walk away from watching it going, yeah, it's progressive rock and Neil's very intelligent lyrics. But as a band, the three of them had fun together. So I'd agree with you. A sad passing. How
about you, Brian? What was your kind of standout event of the year?
We've already talked about, when we did one of our early shows, we talked about Eddie.
Yeah. And
I'm not going to talk about Eddie because we covered that in the show, and Eddie is, I think I said at the time, he was the guitarist who was the next stage from Jimi Hendrix for me.
Yeah.
He took guitar.
Eddie Van Halen, of course.
Eddie Van Halen. So thinking about it, I could quite easily have chosen Eddie as the event of the year. But one of the things, just thinking about albums and us listening to a lot of good music this year, and we talk about reissues, etc. Yeah. But at the time, the passing of Martin Birch was a real pivotal moment for me, because when I look at my early albums that I bought, Whitesnake, Iron Maiden, Deep Purple. How could I forget Deep Purple? Martin Birch was in the back of all of the albums that I listened to, that I love, and he retired. He retired after recording. I'm not quite sure which Iron Maiden. It would have been No Prayer for the Dying. His last album that he did was an Iron Maiden album. Go back and have a look at everything that Martin Birch has either engineered or produced. Classic rock, as you and I talk about. And if we were ever to do our top 20 albums of all time, Martin Birch will feature heavily in that top 20 list. Maybe not in the press as much as Eddie's passing, but Martin Birch has got to be, he has to be recognized as a real loss for the world of rock. So that was a sad one.
Yeah. No, that's good one. I mean, it's I agree. As you say, he produced a lot of the. I think if you flick through most rock fans' album collection that was put together in the late 70s, early 80s, his name, as you say, would feature as the producer. Yeah, good, interesting one, Brian. Thank you for that. So finally, looking back at 2020, always good to look back and look at the reissues of the year. Well, my reissue of the year, I mean, there's no competition as far as I'm concerned. It's a reissue of my favorite live album of all time. And that album is Strangers in the Night by UFO, which was originally put out in, was it originally released in 1979. The last album that Michael Schenker featured on with UFO. Actually, no, it wasn't. He did subsequent ones, but the last of the sort of 70s era. He rejoined in the 90s. And they've reissued it as an expanded 8-disc set with additional shows from various cities. And it's just great. I mean, it's the same set pretty much across all of the discs. And, but you get, small cock-ups. There aren't any overdubs or touch-ups. There's, Phil Mogg's ramblings between songs. There's the odd misbeat. It's just great. I mean, if you're a UFO fan, a hard rock fan, a live album fan, just go out and spend 45 quid on UFO's Strangers in the Night expanded version. And that, dear boy, is my reissue of 2020 right there.
Exactly. No. And for me, that album is, as a live album, is up there. And the fact that you're able to put so many shows on, as you said, there's a show from Chicago. I bet you any money, and I've not listened to all 912 tracks available, but I bet you the quality and the consistency of the performances with that band, they were probably, cooking.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And you can't say that. How many live albums do you think in the past? And we can always talk about the famous "Was Live and Dangerous" actually live. There's many stories about that, but I love it. You've got a great live album. To be warts and all with an album like that, and then say, well, here's some other from that tour. It could actually tarnish the legacy of a band somewhat, but it probably has just re-emphasized that. Do you know
Absolutely.
what? I always like a live album if it makes me feel, Matt, that, gosh, I really wish I'd seen the band on that tour. It's
absolutely,
yeah, live in the hardest city. I would have loved to have seen Whitesnake, that iteration of the band on that tour. And that's a nice memento. So no, I'd agree with you, and it's a great album anyway, and that's the lovely thing about a reissue. If a reissue of a great album is actually enhanced by lots and lots of other material, well then that's a good thing for a reissue, that you're not just getting one track additional.
Absolutely, yeah. So everyone go out and buy Strangers in the Night Deluxe Edition.
Yeah,
and you'll enjoy that. So that was mine. How about you, Brian?
I'll stay away from the obvious because I could quite easily.
You're banned from talking about Thin Lizzy.
I am, but you said it, not me. So as my embargo continues in when we move into 2021, is it all bets are off again? All bets are off, and I'm allowed to talk about Thin Lizzy in 2021.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm consulting with my lawyers.
So, my reissue of the year is from an album that was released in January of 1980, and the band released their 7th studio album to great aplomb and acclaim. And it was recorded in Le Studio in Quebec. Are you getting warm in this at all?
I'm feeling quite warm, actually.
Are you feeling quite warm? And
I think I know what it might be.
You might do. And the track 1, side 1, is probably one of their best known tracks. Good old Spirit of Radio. It is Permanent Waves from Rush. And I think what's really nice about this is that was a period in Rush's, to me, that's Rush's purple period. From a writing perspective, where if you go and watch the DVDs and the films that we've mentioned earlier, that's where Neil Peart in particular feels that the band got their sound, where you're able to have the commerciality with the smart lyrics and just the band really they had complete artistic control of what they were doing at that point. 2112 gave them that platform, and you have Permanent Waves, you've got Moving Pictures, and the fact that the 40th anniversary, here we are talking about 40th anniversary. It comes with, there's various formats, and I do like this about bands where you can go and buy the reissue, then you can buy the deluxe version where it might be a few mixes, then you might have the super deluxe, and then you've the super deluxe, and then you've got the Brian, can we just take away your mortgage for the month, and you have to buy the one for 100 quid. So Rush have got a number of formats, but there's a fantastic, they call it the Ultimate Super Deluxe Edition, which has got lots of exclusive. There's a lovely book which chronologues what the tour was like. There's lots of live recordings, and a bit like the recordings for Strangers in the Night, unreleased materials. So you've got, on that album, you've got from the tour, you've got unreleased shows for Rush, and everybody wants Rush live. And when I was reading about it and listening to the album, it's lovely to have an album which bridges Exit Stage Left and then the live album in terms of 3 stages live, which was in the mid-80s. That one plonks right in the middle, and if you like your live Rush, it just a nice catalogue of that period of Moving Pictures and Permanent Waves. So my reissue of 2020 is the 40th anniversary, Permanent Waves by good old Rush.
Yeah, great choice, Brian. I actually bought that first time around. I think it might be the first Rush album I ever bought.
Really?
In 1980. Yeah. I love it. I love it as an album now. Then it's just got some great songs in it. So that is a great choice, and I will be delving into that reissue because I haven't yet. So thank you for that, Brian. Right, so that's 2020. So let's have and I think we covered it. I mean, it's some good stuff there, I think. And let's have a look forward to next year, 2021. And what are we looking forward to apart from the obvious, Brian? What are you looking forward to most next year?
3 bands I'll call out, or 3 events I'll call out. First one, 2 nights, Hyde Park, Pearl Jam. Yep. It's a bit like, if you haven't seen AC/DC, go and see AC/DC. If you haven't seen Pearl Jam, go and see Pearl Jam. Fantastic live band, put it all out there. Don't do a greatest hits set. They come out and they'll just do it. And again, another band, if you want to watch documentaries, PJ20 is a good Cameron Crowe film. But Pearl Jam are doing 2 nights, 2 different support acts for it, and a pound to a penny, they'll probably do 2 different sets both nights, knowing what the band are like. So really looking forward to Hyde Park. I go to Hyde Park every year, and it's just a fantastic, great event. I would prefer Ramblin' Man as a, that's our weekend of rock away with all of our friends. Yeah. But 2 nights at Hyde Park. Again in London, also in London earlier in the year. That's my Australian accent.
Very good.
The 2 nights at the Royal Albert Hall with Bryan Adams. So Brian's doing 3 nights in total, where he's going to be playing 3 entire albums. So he's doing Cuts Like a Knife, Into the Fire, and Waking Up the Neighbours. And I'm going to 2 of those nights. So I'm going to do Into the Fire, which is the album after Reckless, and it's actually one of my favorite albums of Brian. It's just a great album. And then obviously Waking Up the Neighbours, which had the big single, Everything I Do. So he's doing 2 nights, and Brian's a great live performer. Again, London Royal Albert Hall, lovely venue. You and I went to see Dave Gilmour.
Dave Gilmour, we did,
which was my first time in the Royal Albert Hall. I'd never been to the Royal Albert Hall before that, which is brilliant. And the last one, and we talked about this band earlier on in terms of live gigging, where the live streaming whetted our appetites, is Toto. Toto will be touring next year, coming to Europe. Steve Lukather and Joseph Williams have put a band together. I would say on the basis of the feedback around the live stream, that will sell well. The band are sounding really, really good. So those are my 3 live gigs amongst the load that I'm really looking forward to in 21. You?
Yeah, good choices. Well, I would hopefully see you at one or 2 of those.
You guaranteed.
Unless you're hiding. Although you're normally at the bar, aren't you? So I'll find you.
Looking for my keys.
Absolutely. I tell you what I am looking forward to next year. It's been rescheduled a couple of times. Is a kind of a Nawabum night featuring a headline by Saxon, featuring Girls' School, Crocus, and Diamond Head. It's at well, they are on it. I mean, I can't not mention them.
If Diamond Head weren't there, would you be going?
Yes. Well, I probably would actually. I've never seen Crocus. I've seen Girls' School a few times. But Hammersmith Apollo, or Odeon, as we like to refer to it. I shall be there. You mentioned Rambling Man, which I think that's my kind of benchmark for next year. If we can make it, if we go to Rambling Man, I'll be happy. If it gets cancelled again for another year, or postponed, I should say, I won't be happy.
I'll do a special online gig. I'll do a special. If it's cancelled, I will do a special Rambling Man online gig acoustically.
That's very kind of you, but not really consolation. So hopefully it will be on. I am also looking forward to a variety of other gigs, actually, and I've just been looking through the pages to see who's playing next year. I mentioned Robert John and the Wreck earlier. They're coming next year in May. All being well, they'll be touring. FM are out there again. Love FM. If anyone's never seen FM, check them out. I tell you one that caught my eye, Kingdom of Madness featuring Tony Martin. So, Tony the Cat Martin from the once singer for Black Sabbath. So,
do you know what? This is, we should, you are actually coming up with some artists here, Matt.
Am I?
Where they've got some, let's just do it now. In terms of hidden gems, FM's second album, which Tough It Out, phenomenal. And not to steal your thunder around Tony the Cat Martin, but the album, the 3 albums that he did with Black Sabbath, Headless Cross, and was great. The album Tear is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal album. And then there's the album which is the Eternal Idol, which actually the vocals were recorded by Ray Gillen, sadly passed away, and then they brought Tony the Cat back, and there's actually 2 versions of that album. So there's an album with Ray's vocals and there's an album with Tony. I got to see that band. I got to see Black Sabbath with Tony singing, and it's probably the loudest gig I've ever been to, with Cozy, Tony Iommi, Neil Murray, and Tony the Cat Martin. So,
wow.
Poof.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So, hopefully it'll be great. There's so many other things I could talk about. Broken Wit Rebels, Cheap Trick are back next year. I mean, if you haven't seen, I think everyone's got to see Cheap Trick.
Yes, I'm lucky enough to have seen them a couple of times. Always as a support band to a biggie.
Yeah, they are actually, but they're touring in their own right next year. They're playing slightly sort of smaller venues, Shepherd's Bush Empire in London, and so on. So
get me a plectrum. You have to get If you can't get me a plectrum from Rick Nielsen,
I know he does get through them, doesn't he?
He does.
He must get through a bucket load of plectrums in a gig.
Oh man!
So I'll do my best, Brian. I always look out for you at gigs. Yes. So that's it. Yeah, just live music, really. I think I'll be there. I think a lot of people will be too, because we've been starved of it. And if you're a fan of music, whatever music it is, and if you enjoy live music, there's really nothing like it. You know, the live performance, whether it be in a big festival or a small venue or something in between, you know, it's a great experience. And I think, you know, it's been a very sad year. There's been a lot worse things happened, obviously, than missing out live music. You know, we recognise that, of course, but I think a lot of people can't wait to see their favourite bands playing, and you know, hopefully that'll be the case next year. So that's it. That's what I'm looking forward to particularly.
Yeah.
What about anything else, Brian? What about you? What about albums?
Albums. There's loads of there's So, obviously in 20,
Did I tee you up nicely?
You teed me up nicely, and this is one I'd have been so disappointed, Matt, in my planning for 2021, leaving out the next band, who are my favorite band in the world this week.
Okay,
King's X. Okay. King's X have got.
Back, are they?
King's X have got a new, King's X have got a new album coming out. It's got to the point on Facebook and the King's X appreciation groups where somebody genuinely will go, does anybody know when the King's X album's coming out? And then it's basically everybody comes in and goes, that's the Voldemort conversation. It's like, we're just not allowed to talk about the King's X album when it's coming out. It's like Tony Franklin, who I follow on Facebook and Twitter, who was the bass player in The Firm. Mm-hmm. And he also was the bass player in Blue Murder with John Sykes. Anytime Tony Franklin puts up a picture of him and John Sykes with Carmen Appice, or Appice. So anytime he puts a picture up of him and John, he puts in the bottom of it, please don't talk about a reunion of the band, because everybody comes in and goes, oh, get the band back together, get John and you and Carmen and do it. You know, So King's X hopefully will have a new album coming out next year, which I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully they'll come back and play the rescheduled shows, which were in September. But there's a real, I think there's a lot of artists who have got, and some of these albums are slated. I think is that the right musical slated for release?
Yes.
So you've got some that are rumored. So in terms of nailed on releases next year, and we've talked about this band before at some length, Greta Van Fleet. So they've got their new album coming out in April, which is The Battle of Gardens Gate.
Interesting title.
Which will be good. Transatlantic, who a progressive band who I like. It's a progressive supergroup. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to that one. But in terms of rumored and potential albums, I think we're in for a stonking. Get your pocket money saved up, because Slash has got a new album rumored to be coming out. Recording it with Miles Kennedy, which will be great. Red Hot Chili Peppers back with John Frusciante. They're working on a new album, which will be fantastic. The band that we saw at Rambling Man, who were giving it all up and were on their farewell tour since 2006. Scorpions. Scorpions have got a new album coming out. Guns N' Roses, which would be interesting, because you've got Slash and Duff and Axl back together. There is rumor that Izzy is back in the circles of GNR. Even if he was in the writing of that would be fantastic. Bad Company, and the last one I'll finish off with, which was one of your singles that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which was Wolfgang Van Halen's. Obviously, the single that he dropped, he's got his album coming out next year. So I think there's a lot of good bands that are coming out, I could see a lot of these being released at the back end of the year, which hopefully will mean some of these artists will be coming out on tour to support the album. So, fingers crossed, touch wood, vaccines and all if things are going the way in which they're going, we should have some new music and some from some of our favourite bands treading the boards in 2021. So the future bright.
Absolutely, the future is bright. Well, we hope so. Anyway, It certainly looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so,
it does.
No, that's great. I mean, there's exciting stuff there, isn't there? Wow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, Guns
N' Roses and Scorpions and amazing. Well, I can't really add to that. I mean, I've got a couple of things. There's going to be a new Thunder album. We talked about that a little while ago, which would be great. And there is a new Foo Fighters album in the offing as well, which I can't remember the name of, but it's certainly on its way. Mm-hmm. So, there's, as you say, hopefully plenty of new material for us to listen to next year and beyond. Okay, well, that was good. I enjoyed that. So that's quite interesting. Hopefully our 10 listeners... You
promised. You said I'm not going to make fun of our listeners.
I'm not making fun of them. No, I love our listeners. I do, and we've got a few more than 10. And on that subject, I would just want to say to our listeners, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for all your kind words that you take the time to email us and text us and put comments on Facebook. We really appreciate it, and we love doing this stuff. And we love it that people listen to it and enjoy it and get some, they've discovered new bands and songs and albums and stuff from it. So, great. We'll keep doing it if you keep listening.
I think there's nothing more to say on that. It's been a real journey for us. To do from the first podcast, this is podcast number 5.
I do.
Yeah, and it's been lovely getting the feedback. What's really nice as well too, and I would encourage everybody when you're on our Facebook page or on Twitter, when we do our year in rock, it's really interesting when we pick our favorite albums and when we're reflecting on that year. It's always great to see what everybody else puts down as their favorite albums or what their memory of whatever the year was. And there's been a few times whenever one of our listeners has come back and said, what about the Cinderella album that came out? And you go, oh man, I forgot about that one. So it helps us with activity. So I completely agree with you, mate. It's been lovely having all of the listeners. We'll have a nice Christmas break, and I hope everybody has a good holiday, happy New Year, and we will see you all for episode 6 very, very soon. So Matt, all the best, mate.
See you, mate.
See you soon. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. For Those About to Pod, We Salute You is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.